Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back. Today we're going to do a video response to MrRPGcrazy. I'm a big fan of his channel and I really liked his last video that was about his most nostalgic games ever. And for this reason I've decided to make a video response, although I'm pretty sure I've made a similar video some years ago as a response to the Happy Console Gamer, I believe. But I've decided to make it again in order to expand my answer, because I'm pretty sure that I focused only on one game on that, probably on that video, and that game is not going to change. So that game is bound to be on this video response. But I decided to expand it, and that it's to talk about more very nostalgic games to me, as MrRPGcrazy mentioned 3 games, which to me are an excellent pick. So watch his video definitely. It also gave good reasons for his decision. And in my case, I've decided to expand it by genres, because even though I am mainly an RPG player, I love RPGs, there are also other genres that I love almost as much as RPGs, and those are 2D side-scroll games and survival horror. So I decided to talk about my most nostalgic games for each of these genres. So for RPGs, side-scrolling, and survival horror. So, because after all, these are my favorite genres still to this day. And it could be interesting to talk about some of my most nostalgic or important, so you can know me better as a gamer or something like that. So let's start with the 2D side-scrolling, and with this I'm talking mainly about NES games, because that is still one of my favorite genre. It's per se probably it's my most nostalgic genre, since it's the game. These are the kind of games that introduced me to video gaming in the first place. And technically, my most nostalgic game as the first game that I ever remember playing, but it's not my answer, as I explain in a moment. Technically, it's Contra, the first Contra, that in Europe was called Probotector. That is, as I said, the first game I remember playing. It was at a friend's house, who had the NES before me, and I remember vividly playing Contra, Probotector, as I said, it's the same. And I remember that I was like in kindergarten or something like that. I was really, really little by the time, and I was amazed because I never played a video game before. I kind of heard it before, as much as a 3 years old or something can heard about video games. But it really grabbed my attention, my imagination. I mean, I knew that I liked it and it clicked instantly. But that it's not my answer, for a simple reason. I never own, and I still don't own, Contra on the NES. My most nostalgic game, on the other hand, because it's basically the second game that I remember playing, and like in this case I own this game, and it's a phenomenal game. It's one of the best to me 2D side-scroller games. It's Mega Man 2. And it's probably that it was, I think, my answer to Happy Console Gamer. That it's probably my most nostalgic game ever, because as I said, it's the first game together with Contra I remember playing. But contrary to Probotector, I owned that game. It's one of it's, let's say, together with Mario and Zelda, it's the first NES game that I remember like holding in my hand, that my brother and I owned, even though he never played because my brother hates video game. Basically, he received the NES that I own is technically his. He received it for his birthday, but he didn't care, so he gave me his NES, saying, "Well, you can have it. I don't care." I was over the moon for that. And I remember that together with Mario and Zelda, Mega Man 2 is... I played Mega Man 2 before Mario and Zelda, probably. That's my memory. I remember playing Mega Man 2 before, like, what would you expect, like Mario, Zelda, and others. So that is, of course, my most nostalgic game in general. But if I want to expand, another very nostalgic. By the way, I don't have the cartridge with me, so I cannot show you the game because most of my consoles, as you know, are not with me here in London. But I have some alternatives for things I want to talk about, so I cannot show you the games, but you all know Mega Man 2. I don't need to show you. Another one that it's super nostalgic for me because I played it even though not as early as Probotector or Mega Man 2, it's Castlevania. And I can actually show you my Game Boy Advance cartridge because I don't own the cartridge of the first Castlevania. I bought this years ago, but I played it on the NES. And I made a video recently because I've been able to beat this game only recently after, I don't know, 25 years or something like that. But the same friend that I mentioned for Contra also owned Castlevania, other Mega Man games. I mean, he had a really impressive NES collection for the time. Since when I started to get into buying games and stuff, let's say that I had 5 games, he had like 17, 20 or something like that. He had a massive collection for my standards, and all with excellent titles. Among these, there was Castlevania. And during his birthday party, I don't know, it was probably 7 or 8 when I was 4, at his place, we, together with other friends, we played the NES a lot, of course, because there was nothing else to do, basically. And Castlevania was one of the games that we played the most, because it was the most challenging, of course. We all know how difficult Castlevania is. And for this reason, I wanted to... It's mainly an honorary mention together with Probotector. Not because I don't own it, because now I do, but because you can only use one answer, technically. Technically, it's my video, I can do whatever I want. But Castlevania is also super nostalgic for me, because I played it when I was really young, and I loved it since the first moment I played it. And from that moment, I became a huge Castlevania fan and loved the series. Till to this day, I still am a big Castlevania fan. I still need to play like the Lord of the Shadows games, because not having my PS3 here, I cannot play these games. I will probably play this Christmas, I believe. But so for 2D side-scroll games, I can go on. I mean, Batman, other Mega Man games, of course, other on the Super Nintendo. But I wanted to focus on the NES because that was, in a way, the golden age of side-scrolling. And especially like 2D side-scroll platform adventures like Mega Man, Castlevania, those were really special to me. I absolutely love those games, and still to this day, I love them because they're so nostalgic. They bring back all these memories when I started to play video games, and for a long time, they were my favorite games until, and here we're moving into the second part of my answer, until I discover another genre, and that it's the RPGs, of course. And for that, we have to wait for the 16-bit generation. And more specifically, this might be like a bit weird, but for the Sega Genesis, because I didn't own a Sega Genesis back then, I still don't. But my answer is a Sega Genesis game. And for this, I have to put this game because this is the first JRPG that I ever played, and it's the game that ignited my passion for the genre, which is still my favorite to this day, and that it's traditional turn-based JRPG. My most nostalgic JRPG, it's without a doubt Phantasy Star 2. Also because it was instrumental in making me a better gamer, because up until that day, I was a hardcore Nintendo fan. To me, the only, like, the equivalent of video games was Nintendo. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else was as good as, like, I was a real fanboy. So when most of my friends were like me, but here and there were some people with a Sega console, and even one of my friends was into. He decided to move from Nintendo to Sega Genesis. He dared betray Nintendo. But he managed to convince me to try it. Because at first, of course, I was like, oh, yeah, it's good, but it's not the Super Nintendo. But the interesting thing is, when we play Fantasy Star, it clicked instantly again, because I think it was something that I really need. Because up until that moment, I was really interested in the idea of role-playing game, even though I never played Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. I like the idea. I used to play a lot with like Telltale books. I made my own adventure. I love fantasy. I love science fiction. I mean, all things that I was thinking, like, I would love to see this in a video game, not knowing that there were games like that, like already on the NES. But combining the thing that I didn't read magazines at the time, not until the PlayStation 1 days, and almost all RPGs were not released in Europe at the time. Not all of them, but a really high percentage of RPGs were not released in Europe. It was like 2 out of 10 that were released like in the West were also released in Europe, and then it was not even all of them compared to Japan. So it wasn't easy to be being an RPG fan in Europe until, I say, the PlayStation 1 days, and especially the PlayStation 2 days. That is when we started to get the same releases as North America. Because already during the PS1 days, a lot of great games weren't released in Europe. Just to mention 2 examples, 2 of the games I want to play the most: Chrono Cross and Xenogears. Xenogears. So Phantasy Star 2, when I played it, I was like, whoa, this is awesome. First of all, it looked really gorgeous. I mean, you all know how Phantasy Star 2 looks. It has this really, really good anime-style graphics, and gorgeous colors, a great soundtrack, and a combat system that I fell in love with. That's why I'm still saying that turn-based RPG, it's my favorite RPG genre, type of RPG. And that game was hard as fuck when we played it for the first time. I think we played for 3 hours and we were stuck at the first dungeon, Shure. We didn't know that we had to go back in order to recruit party members, first of all. The dungeons in Phantasy Star 2 are insanely difficult, I think, and very confusing. But we love that game. And as I said, that it's a game that made me a better gamer, because from that moment I say, okay, Nintendo, it's not the only thing, it's not the only answer. There are good games on the Sega consoles. So from that, like, the rest is history. After that, I asked my parents, and for whatever reason they agreed. That was very weird, to buy me for, I don't remember, it was probably for my birthday or Christmas or something, the Game Gear, for example. And I really liked it, even though I don't know where it is now. That it's embarrassing to admit. But I didn't mind. I kind of liked the Game Gear. I thought it was much better than Game Boy, mainly because it was just in colors. I mean, I was really young and I didn't really care about the library, because I liked the games that I had. But even then, after like the 16-bit era, I decided to move to the PlayStation. Then I moved to Xbox. I was very curious about others other than Nintendo. And I still like Nintendo, even during other, like the PlayStation 1 or the Xbox days. Like, I had a Game Boy Color, I bought the DS, I bought the Wii. I mean, my love for Nintendo was never questioned. But Phantasy Star 2 was instrumental to make me, I think, really a better gamer, to appreciate everything in gaming. Even though it was from a company that maybe I wasn't a big fan of, even though back then I liked Sega. That wasn't the matter. What mattered, and still matters to me, are the games, not who developed the games. I mean, a good game transcends things like the company or the console. And that is something that Phantasy Star 2 was essential in make me realize. You need to have that realization, let's say like that, to admit that with yourself in order to be a better gamer, because you don't have to be focused only on one console. You can, in order to collect or something, but to being a collector like me, what I want to do with video games is playing them, collect them in order to play them. And I don't mind if it's Nintendo, if it's PlayStation, if it's Microsoft, or whatever. The important thing to me is enjoying the games, and Phantasy Star 2 was essential in that. And of course, the most important thing, it's super nostalgic because it's a game that made me discover video games RPGs. Um, as I said, the rest is history. On the Super Nintendo, I started to look for RPGs, even though there weren't many. As I said, I managed to rent some, to play some, and that was probably the main reason why I moved to PlayStation. I have no idea when or how it happened, why I bought the PlayStation, I really don't remember. But on PlayStation, most of my games are RPGs because I really wanted to play them. And since the 16-bit days, RPGs are my favorite genre. It will always be, even though I love, as I said, other games. But RPGs are really special to me, and it all started because of Phantasy Star 2. But, and by the way, I was almost forgetting, this is the only Phantasy Star 2 related cartridge that I have here in London, and it's the Phantasy Star collection on the Game Boy Advance. It has Phantasy Star 1, 2, and 3. I played and beat 1 on this, and I replayed 2. I haven't beat it yet. I think I gathered all the party members. I was grinding a little, and I believe. Oh yes, I stopped playing, but I will go back to this because I really want to finish that so I can play 3. I was into the Climatrol or Climacontrol or something. I think like the final dungeon of the first part of the game, and that it's really difficult. So, but if I have to mention another really important game to me, super nostalgic but really special to me, even more than Phantasy Star 2 in a way, a game that really made me say, yes, this is the genre I want to be focused on. Again, it's not the original copy of the game. I have that in Italy, but of course I have to mention Breath of Fire 3, the PSP version here, but also have the PS1 version at home. Breath of Fire 3 is one of my favorite game of all time. Basically, it's my co-favorite game of all time, if that makes any sense. This game is so important to me because it's the game that made me discover the Breath of Fire series, because even though there were Breath of Fire 1 and 2 before, they weren't released in Europe, of course, since they were Super Nintendo RPGs. Now I played and beat both Breath of Fire 1 and 2 on Game Boy Advance, and I love them. But Breath of Fire 3, probably it's my favorite of the series. It's always between 2 and 3 for me, because I love those games. I love 4, I love 5, even though everybody hates Dragon Quarter, I still like that game. But 3, it's really special to me. It's probably my favorite of the series. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I love everything about this. I love the story, it's phenomenal. The characters are so good and nostalgic to me. I mean, the combat, the graphics, the music, even though Breath of Fire, the music in Breath of Fire, it's not the strongest point of the series, but for the most part it's good. But this has a really good soundtrack, but the story, I think, it's where it really shines. As I said, together with 2, Breath of Fire 3, it's really super special to me because it's the main reason, together with 2, why Breath of Fire, it's my favorite RPG franchise. So, Phantasy Star, Breath of Fire, I mean, I absolutely love those series. And finally, let's move on to the third and final answer. We're moving into the survival horror. And we skip to the next generation. We're moving into the PlayStation, because before those days I never heard of survival horror. I didn't know that there were games like this on the NES, the Super NES, or competition. Like, I didn't know about like Sweet Home, Clock Tower, those kind of games on the other system. And of course I have to mention Resident Evil 1. Even though it's not my favorite survival horror, it's not my favorite Resident Evil game, it's still a very good one. But the original Resident Evil on PlayStation really shocked me in a way. It caught me by surprise. I didn't expect to like the genre so much, and thinking that now it's one of my favorite genre thanks to that game. But again, as I said, it clicked instantly. I loved it because I like this kind of horror movie kind of games, like B horror movies. And Resident Evil was that. It was a B horror movie video game. It has the quirkiness. It has, however, the horror elements with the zombies, you being trapped into the mansion, and all those elements that I absolutely love. I mentioned in a previous video the opening. How can you not love the opening of Resident Evil 1? That is one of the best opening on the PlayStation 1, by the way. And probably the best moment. No! Don't go! Fantastic. The horrible and amazing at the same time voice acting during the game. You were almost a Jill sandwich. I mean, I love that game. But I love the genre, the kind of gameplay. The tank controls, the music, like the atmosphere that it creates. Resident Evil 1, strangely enough, it's the only Resident Evil that sometimes not really scared me, but I found it more creepy than others because of this sometimes music while you're into this massive mansion. I found it creepy for whatever reason. While Resident Evil 2 and 3 they weren't scary at all. But when I play this, I say, oh, I'm here for the long run. I love this game. I love this kind of gameplay. And it's not wonder that after that I played every Resident Evil I can get, played every other survival horror I can get on PlayStation 1. I played the Dino Crisis game, the Parasite Eve games, the Silent Hill. I played it, but only shortly, but I really wanted to. Silent Hill, although I didn't manage to own it at the time. But again, super nostalgic, as this game introduced me to one of my favorite genres. It's still to this day. I'm trying to get more survival horror now, as I think the PlayStation 1 survival horror has had something really special in terms of like nowadays are more nostalgic, and I'm not saying that on PlayStation 2 or others they are not good, of course. I mean, there are amazing survival horror on PlayStation 2 and or all other consoles, but those on PlayStation 1 to me are really special. They have that nostalgia feeling that as they were the first of, you can say, like the modern survival horror. They standardized the genre in a way. After that, you can almost say that survival horrors were Resident Evil clone in a way. But yes, these are my answers. These are my most nostalgic games. The main answers are Mega Man 2, Phantasy Star 2, and Resident Evil 1. By other honorary mention, of course, they can include Castlevania, Breath of Fire 3, because all of these games mean something really special to me. I play them on certain times where I really wanted to play games like that. I like them from the first instant I play them. They introduced me to what now are my favorite genre, and I mainly play these kind of games. I might try something else, of course, because I'm curious about different games, but I don't stretch too far from my comfort zone, I have to be honest, as a gamer. I mean, most of my games here are RPGs, survival horror, side-scroller, or similars, or variations of this genre. I never liked driving games. I don't have a single driving game with me here. For example, I never liked sports game. I don't have a single sports game with me. It's not my intention to have complete collections. I will never buy games that I'm not interested into. And because of these games, mainly, I became absolutely fanatical about these genres, and they were essential to make me the gamer that I am today. So, with their stories, their characters, their music, and everything, they're mainly the reasons why I love video gaming so much. Of course, there were many other games, like, as I said, I didn't play Mega Man 2 alone at the time. I played Mario, I played Zelda, I played DuckTales, Castlevania, all those other games, but I was focused on that specific genre. Again, RPGs. I didn't even own Phantasy Star 2, but that is the one that made me want to play and get as much RPGs as I can. And it was instrumental to make me choose the PlayStation 1, for example, instead of the N64, and to get as much RPGs as I can on that system, and so on. I mean, survival horror. I half of my games on basically 3/4 of my PS1 collection are RPG. The rest is survival horrors and others. Kinda, in a way. It's not that simple, but most of my games are RPGs and survival horror on the PlayStation 1. So this was my video response to MrRPGcrazy. This was my choice. I decided to went mainly into genre and explain why and the circumstances of my choices. So let me know what you think. Go watch MrRPGcrazy video. His choice is very good. So I hope you like this video, guys. I'll see you next time. Take care.